Guidance podcast, where we explore the power of living aligned and from your intuition each day. I'm your host, Karen Williams. Every day you receive hundreds of intuitive messages guiding and empowering you to live a life in alignment. Are you listening? Through lived experiences, ongoing self-reflection, and enriching stories, I am joined by extraordinary people and thought leaders in their field who have embraced the magic of following their intuition and are sharing their light with the world. Trust that these conversations will meet you right where you are, and consider this your nudge from the universe to listen. Join us.
Hello and welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you. Sarah, hold on just one moment. I'm hearing an echo. Okay, I think that's better. Okay, we are talking all things tarot today, and my guest is Sarah Ty from journeythroughtarot.com. Sarah has been moved by the magic of tarot for the better part of her life. She is fascinated by the gift and medicine that tarot cards have been for her. She welcomes the opportunity to help others find their way and reconnect them with their inner compass. Beautiful. Welcome, Sarah. So, tarot is not something that I have as a spiritual tool really ever dug into. Is tarot something that finds you? And if it does, how did it find you? How did you first become interested in it?
Yes. So I feel like when it comes to spiritual tools and modalities, it really is, it is like it connects to you in the way that you need it to. And that's all tools. So I do think that we find what resonates most with us and it just kind of presents itself. For me, I started back in high school. I was 16, 17 years old when I got my first deck. And my first experience with tarot at the time was more of a entertainment, let's see what this thing can do kind of an energy. I grew up very Christian. And so when I started branching into tarot, it was more, that's when I started asking questions and kind of branching away from the faith that I was raised in. And for me, it was more of a rebellious, like taboo. Let's dive into the spooky thing. And so that's how it started with me. And it was fun. And it was kind of like spooky to see how some things, aligned. And I would bring it to high school and some kids would come over and be like, can you give me a reading? And so at the time it was more just fun. But as I got older, I always had a tarot deck. I always owned one. There's always one close by. And I'd still just kind of read for friends and family just for fun. And then maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, I pulled out my deck during a really difficult time in my life and asked for guidance. And I was really surprised by what came through. And not only what came through, but what continued to come through. The messages were profound. There was so much clarity and insight, and it was consistent. There's 78 cards in a deck. So when you get a consistent message over and over again, it tends to stand out. And that's really when I started using it more as a personal guide. And I would turn to my cards when I would go through a difficult time just to kind of get that insight, see if I'm making the best decision, things like that. And then, so that's kind of how I got into it as far as just more on a personal level.
Wow,
and then in
beautiful.
2020 was when I went into it professionally.
So somebody like myself who's a complete newbie to tarot, I've explored and dabbled in oracle cards, but not in tarot cards. So can we go back a little bit? Can you explain a little bit about like the history and the origins and like the significance of this, of tarot cards in people's lives and spiritual practices? And
Yeah. So I'll tell you a little bit of the difference too between Oracle and Tarot, at least from what I've experienced between the two, because they're very similar modalities. They're both cards. They both have insight to them. I think Oracle cards tend to be 48 cards, if I'm remembering correctly, something around there. And then Tarot is 78. From what I've gathered about Oracle is that it's like it skims the surface and it gives you that uplifting messages of, kind of like pep talks and it's very lighthearted. Whereas the tarot, while I do believe all of the cards are medicine, it's all there to help uplift you. It just takes a bigger deep dive, and there's a lot more of the nitty gritty details. So that way, when you get, like, if you're going through something, I feel like an oracle card is going to give you like a affirmation or something really, again, really light and general to help you through it. Whereas tarot is going to like get in there and be like, this is what you need to focus on. This is what you need to heal. These are your blocks. It's going to really just get more detailed versus the oracle, which keeps things more just in the lighter realm and not really wanting to take the deep dive. As far as history, historically, tarot started, I want to say it was created in the 1500s, something like that. And it actually was created as a card game. It wasn't even created as a divination tool. And then I think it was right around the 1700s is when it started becoming more used as a divination tool. And so with that said too, part of the mechanics of a tarot deck and the reason why it's so detailed, kind of a fun fact, it's really similar to playing cards. And a lot of people don't know that either. So playing cards has 52 cards in a deck, and it has 4 suits, right? You have the spades, the clubs, the hearts, and the diamonds. Well, in tarot, you have the major arcana and the minor arcana. The major arcana is where you get your trump cards, like the sun, the moon, the hermit, etc. And those are more of like the heavy hitter cards. And then the minor arcana is the suits. They also have suits. So you have the wands, you have the cups, you have the swords, and you have the pentacles or coins. And then you also have kings and queens, and you don't have jacks, but you have pages, which are basically very similar to playing cards. If I were to give you a reading with the playing card, I would just interchange the jack with the page. And they also have aces too. And so, yeah, that's kind of like the mechanics of it. But when it comes to how it works, I feel like when you show up with the intent of I want to heal and I want to kind of get some clarity on whatever I'm going through, that intention is what shows up through the cards. I don't think the cards themselves are magic. I think it's you showing up with the intention and the positive energy to put into it.
Yeah, that's an interesting segue. So I'm curious about what role intuition plays in how you develop or how a spread is read in a reading for somebody. Does intuition play any role? Is it more mechanics of the cards and your interpretation of what the cards are saying, or is it a blend kind of both?
It's a blend. It's definitely a blend. Intuition is very important. And while you can read tarot and not be in touch with your intuition, it's going to be more of a cold reading. It's just, and you can still take something from that. But I really feel like the intuition is what kind of ignites it. But you have to be in touch with your intuition. You have to really know what that feels like in your body and what that is. Because when it comes to the cards, you first want to know the basic meaning of each card, like the baseline. And once you have the baseline meaning of a card, then when you have a spread, if you use a spread, some readers don't. I kind of go back and forth between the spread that I created and going more organically. So it just kind of depends on the reading that I give. And I know other readers have it, do it different ways. But if you have a spread, then you do want to correlate the placement of a card with the baseline meaning. But the intuitive part, that's kind of when you bring it all together. It's when you see the bird's eye view and see the full message. And I know for me as a reader, there are even times where a card will come through to me in a completely different meaning than I would normally read it as. And that's where that intuition piece comes from. And learning to trust that feeling. So I've learned now that when I get a feeling like, oh, this means this, even if in my mind I'm like, I don't get it, why am I feeling this way? I've learned to just go with it because it always makes sense to the person I'm reading it for. There's a reason it came up that way with me in that particular reading. But you have to trust yourself and be in touch with that part of that intuitive side of you if you're going to go that route.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction to make, that it's, I believe that when we use these tools, it can be really easy to take them at face value and then let the tools inform what's coming through our intuition. But what I'm hearing you say is that it's often let the tool do the work, let the deck do the work, and then allow what's happening in your intuition to flow through, whether it's what you know about the card or not, or what you've been told about the card or not. And I think that's a really beautiful approach because that feels very authentic to me. And it feels like it would be very authentic to the people that you're reading for.
Yeah. And I think another part of that too, oh, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, never mind. If that comes back to me.
It's okay. Let's talk a little bit about the skeptics. So when we look at tarot, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a little skeptical about it. And I don't think it's that I don't necessarily believe in what is happening. It's just that I'm not drawn to it. So I think there's naturally a little bit of skepticism for me. And not that I'm not remaining open to what it is. So I'm just curious, how does that land with you? When people are skeptical of tarot and the gift within tarot, how do you navigate that?
Honestly, I love working with skeptics for the most part because I mean, as long as they're open-minded. If someone's closed-minded and like completely willing to like they're just there to shut me down, I don't want to work with that kind of a person because
Right.
what's the point? But with those that are naturally curious, I really love to work with those kind of people because I mean, I'm naturally a skeptic too in my own way. I mean, it sounds funny, but I'm always just as excited and surprised when it resonates with the other person, even though it does over and over and over again. And I think it's because the messages aren't coming from me. And I like to make that distinction too, is when I give a reading, I like to, this is where I was going when I lost my train of thought. Our ego. So we have our ego, which is our mind, and our mind likes to analyze and make sense of things. And that's why most readers will go to another reader if they need a reading, because sometimes our own bias gets in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. When you're reading for someone else, I make it a really, I make a very important decision to always remove my ego because the messages aren't for me. They're not for me to interpret and understand. Then that's why they won't ever make sense to me because I'm not meant to hear them. I'm just meant to share them. So when it comes to reading for skeptics that are open and curious, and again, and I'm always excited when it actually resonates because I don't ever expect it. I mean, I've learned to expect it, but it doesn't come from me. So I'm always just as excited when it comes through and when it works out, and which it does over and over and over again. But many skeptics have actually have left working with me more open-minded, and they feel like they took something from it. A good example of this is I do events where I do like corporate events, birthday parties, bachelorette parties, etc. And most of the guests that sit with me have never had a reading before, which is really exciting because I get to kind of dispel some of the woo-woo around it and really show them what it is I do. And I've had plenty of people who've come and sat down who immediately, all I can think is, oh my gosh, this person is not open to this at all. I could see it in their face. They're very much like, okay, let's get this over with. And then of course, while I'm doing the reading, they're not giving me any tells at all, which is fine. I don't need that. I just, like I said, I just share what I need to share. But there's always that part of the back of my mind thinking, okay, I really hope this resonates. I mean, I'm just going with what's coming through, and I'm trusting that Spirit's showing up for them as it always does. But when you don't get any kind of like validation, it's like, oh my gosh, at the end, is this going to be really scary? You know, are they going to be like, yeah, that didn't resonate at all? And 9 times out of 10, by the time I'm done, even though like I didn't get anything from them, they look like they're sitting there with their arms crossed. Like, what is this? 9 times out of 10 at the end, they're like, that was really good. And then they usually share with me how it all resonated and made sense to them. And so I don't really deal with a lot of like, I don't get attacked from skeptics. I don't get people that are rude to me about it. I was really fearful when I started my business about running into people like that. It hasn't even been a thing. And I think most people, if it's not for them, they just avoid it, you know, and that's totally fine. And to your point too, about how, you've never really been drawn to tarot, I think that everyone, again, like everyone has their own modality. So there could be another tool, like oracle cards might be your tool. I have actually, most of my friends are oracle readers. And I think it's just, you go with what speaks to you. And oracle cards to me don't speak to me because I want the details. I want to get into it. And tarot allows me to get into it, whereas the oracle is just more like a lighter tune. And so, but there's not pentacles, there's pendulums, and there's runes, and there's all sorts of tools. I would just say that whatever it is that resonates is what's going to draw it to you. But if you don't understand it, of course, you're going to be skeptical of what it does.
Yeah. I'm curious, when you talk about in a reading, the messages that come through, it's not from you. What is that message? Where do the messages come from? What do you believe the message, or where do you believe the message is coming from?
That is a great question. For me, reading tarot is a very spiritual practice. And so I root it in that. And that's when I said that I trust spirit's going to show up for them. I just know that it will. So I believe that we're all interconnected. We're all energetically, where source runs through all of us, which is what connects us all together. So when there's the intention of, I'm going to read for someone's coming to me with the intention of, I need clarity, guidance and clarity. I just trust that whatever modality they believe in, which I think source and divine, I think it all encompasses it I think all religions are right to a point. So to me, it's like all one and the same, but whatever modality they believe in is what's showing up for them. And I am just the interpreter. I am just the person in the middle that is sharing what's coming through. That's why I like to remove my ego, because it doesn't belong there. It's supposed to be for the person. And I always just hand it over to spirit and say, okay, whatever's meant to come through will come through. And I'm just going to trust it. Because there's been lots of times I'll pull a reading, and at first glance, I have no idea what the heck that even means. Or it could even be like, whoa, I have to say that, and I just trust it. I've just learned to go with it, and it always turns out really well. And so I do believe that it's spirit or God or divine showing up, and I'm just the person in the middle.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm curious for the people that are listening that will say, well, Sarah, how is it just not the physicality of the cards that you've drawn? And then it's just, how do we separate that this is something spiritual that you've drawn and not just the next card in the deck?
See, that's where faith comes in. You got to have a little faith. I mean, like I said, too, you don't have to read tarot from a spiritual place. You can read it from I know that there are therapists that use tarot in therapy, for instance. So you can do it from more of a non-spiritual place. But I also come from the belief that everything's spiritual ultimately. So, when you're when you're surrendering to a higher power in any capacity, you're still kind of trusting that the message is supposed to be for you. So, I mean, I think I personally, that's why it's so spiritual for me, is because I think it is all spiritual. But even if you try to take spirituality out of it, you're still going to get a profound message. It just may not connect as deeply.
Yeah, and it's about the intention you put into it, right? Everything's about the intention we put into something and want out of something. You were speaking about the people when you started your business having fear around not having people align with what you do. And I think that's interesting that kind of just, it really was a non-issue. And really you found alignment in the work that you're doing, and the people that are attracted to you have found alignment in the work that you're doing. So bravo for stepping into that. That's really amazing.
It does take bravery to put yourself out there in any business. When I think most people who start new things like that, that's the first thought is, what will people think? Especially what will my friends and family think? But when it's something like tarot, or that's taboo, you add the stigma to it, then it's like it's a little more scary. But I always recommend to just go for it. Just do it. It's usually your fear of the fear that's actually holding you back, not what you're actually afraid of.
Oh, that's great advice. I mean, movement through fear is Because really, what is that fear? Is it real? Is it imagined? I'm curious about your conservative, maybe religious upbringing, and what your family maybe has said about your dive into the tarot world.
Well, when I was a teenager, I was forced to still go to church till I was 18. It was, that was their last little way of like making sure that they did all they could before they cut me loose. Um, but I never was told that I couldn't keep a tarot deck. I was never told that it was something I wasn't allowed to have. And I'm not. There is a part of my family that I don't discuss this with, so I really, they're the ones I'd be most curious about how they feel about it. But my mom, for instance, she's still very Christian. She's very open-minded, but she's very Christian. So she doesn't understand what I do,
Mm-hmm.
but she supports me in what I do. So it's
A good mom.
yeah. So I appreciate the support, but she doesn't really get it.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just fine. My fear was about family coming after me with more of the "you're going to go to hell" kind of kind of messages. That really scared me of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get so much judgment. And no, I think they just respected that, hey, she's doing something different, and they may not agree with me, but they're not coming after me for it. So yeah, it's more of just a mutual respect. If I don't get it, but you do you.
Yeah, that's good. And that's a good supportive family, right? We don't always have to understand what other people are up to.
No.
So let's talk a little bit about like any sort of stories that you could share about readings that you've done that have just really been eye-opening for you. Things that have maybe, I don't know, shifted your perspective on how powerful tarot is.
Yeah. So I'll start with right before I officially started my business. I had been playing with the idea of starting a business, but it kept coming to me. I was kind of searching for my purpose back in the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, and tarot kept coming to me in different ways. And I kept saying, no, I can't do tarot. No one's going to get it. What would people think of me? How can I make a living doing this? Like, I was like, no, 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 no. But I was kind of still playing with the idea, kind of behind closed doors. And so I've got brave enough one day to just post on social media to like my friends, and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about starting a tarot business. Who wants a free reading and to give me feedback? And the people that reached out were actually people I didn't know very well. They were like, the distant friends on my friends list. And the first couple ones that just blew my mind it was free. It was just looking for feedback, kind of gauging whether or not this is really something I could even pursue. And I had two different friends of mine that after I gave them these free readings actually said, hey, what's your Venmo? I want to send you a couple dollars, because that was exactly what I needed to hear. And it was so profound. And it just blew my mind because I wasn't looking for that. I was just looking for that validation. So that was like, oh my gosh, I made such a difference with this free reading that they like want to send me $15 for it. Like, what? And so then the more I started doing this, my focus isn't on fortune telling. That's something else. I don't think I had a chance to share that yet. So I don't do like the predictive type reading. It's really all about being in the now. And so the more I did this, the more I realized how important it was to share, to really get people, meet them where they are. What happens in a reading is you'll hear where you've been, where you're at now, and then how to get where you want to go. And so that's like where that empowerment piece is. And so I started seeing how powerful that was, even for, and I had people who either were distant friends or total strangers who were like, I don't know how you're getting into my situation in my life, but it felt like for them, it was very confirming. It was very validating. It really helped them understand that, okay, so I'm not stuck. There is a way forward. And you're able to pick up on stuff that I've never shared with you, which also helps me believe that things are going to be okay because something bigger than me is guiding me. But a couple of readings that come to mind as like specific examples. I was doing a Halloween party, and it was like a witchy theme Halloween party. It was really fun. It was one of the ones I was hired for. And I always try to keep those, well, I can't help what comes through, and I don't sugarcoat. I don't try and edit it. So like I mentioned, I just learned to go with it. But I always do hope and try to keep them very lighthearted at parties because people are there to have a good time. And I had one lady that sat down with me, and the very first card, the theme card that came up was grief. And then there's a lot of there was the tower. There was a lot of heavy cards in there. And the whole message was about, this grief wasn't being processed and she wasn't working through it, and it was holding her back and stunting her from moving forward. And as I'm speaking, I could see her holding back tears. I could see her trying to hold it together. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I know you're trying to have a good time. In my mind, I just felt so bad. But by the end of the reading, that's when she finally was like, oh my God, I just lost my dad in March. And which was, probably 6 months prior. And she said, that's exactly what I've been going through. I just haven't been dealing with it. I haven't been processing it. My life stopped. It was it was exactly what she needed to hear. And, that was, and I have lots of those moments, but that one was more profound, I think, because of the setting and the initial, I was not super open to sharing the reading just because of the environment and everything. But again, learning to trust and just going with it. And obviously she needed to hear that message, and she was very grateful that that's what came through for her.
That's amazing. There's a certain level of trust that you have to take, right? Trusting in yourself, trusting that spirit will move through, and then trusting that you can see people where they're at through the messages with no judgment, and just putting it out there and knowing that what you say and what delivers will resonate with them. So that's a fine balance to move back and forth between.
I have another story that's a little funnier and more lighthearted, but speaks to exactly what you were just referring to. It was a more recent party. It was a kind of like a bridal shower or bachelorette party type. But it was co-ed. So, men and women there. And the gentleman that came in, he was super friendly. It was just a quick little reading I was doing, and he just asked about his relationship. And so for the quick readings I do, the first card is what's working for you. The second card is the challenged area. And then the final card is higher self message. So all the cards were going to be pertaining to his relationship. Well, the card that came up around not working for him and being a challenged area, I saw that card and I was just like, why? Don't make me say this. What is this one here? It was the 7 of cups, and it was upright. And so it basically, and when I got to it, I was so afraid to share it with him because I'm like, oh my God, this guy's going to get so angry with me. So the card itself in that position, it basically, and what I got intuitively was, you're being very loyal to your partner, but you feel trapped and you want options. I know. I was so afraid of how he was going to take that, because
was his partner at the party?
she was, but she wasn't with him in the room. He took it. He was a very open-minded person. He was blown away when I said that, and he was very like, oh my gosh, she's like, my wife is an amazing woman, but I'm a little more freaky than she. He's like, that is so right on, and I could see how that's getting in the way of my connection, and but it was what he needed to hear, and I had to just trust that he was open, and I wasn't getting yelled at or something for that. But
that's a great story. Yeah, I love that. So you touched on this a little bit. We may have to do another episode where we talk more about the cards, because I think it's beyond the scope of the time we have today. But can you tell a little bit about not necessarily the spreads, but what happens with the cards when they show in a certain direction?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that is kind of that depends on the reader. Okay. There are different ways that you can do it. You can Google the correct way, but every reader has a different technique. Some readers don't even read reversals. And it just depends on the reader and their preferences. And so for me, I love reversals because it takes you down another more detail. It gives you that a little bit more than what you would get if it was just upright. So they vary depending on the card. Some cards reversal speaks to resistance, where you know you need to be doing this, but you're totally like, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm going to just ignore it or run from it or sweep it under the rug. Or sometimes the card could mean that they're self-aware of it and they're working on it. So it depends on the card and which one it is and where in the placement. So, but that's usually what it shows up as. Either it's resisting or it's you are actually already working on it. This is not something that you're unaware of. You are aware of it and you're trying to do better. So it's just
okay. So let me ask a follow-up question to that. Are some cards only reversals and some cards? No, sorry, I said that wrong. If you see a reversal, are some cards only that you're resistant to it, and some cards only that you're working on it, or is that interchangeable too? Did I ask that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
So for the most part, it's the first one. For the most part, it's usually one or the other. Occasionally, kind of like I've already explained, there's been times where the way I would normally read that is not how I'm feeling I need to read it. And so it does sometimes change, but for the most part, it's pretty much like I stick with, how I already interpret it. But yeah, there's been times where I start to interpret it that way and I'm like, wait, hold on. No, that's not how it's coming in. And then I shift it. So it just, that's where that intuitive piece is really important is
Yes.
You have to like know your body and know what it feels like when you're sharing something that's like, wait, hold on. That's not quite
yeah, let's dive into that a little bit. What does it feel like in your body when something, how do you continue to tap into what your intuition is telling you? And you don't let your ego override this is a fine balance I'm finding between what the cards are saying, not interpreting what the cards are saying, letting your intuition flow, letting spirit speak through the cards. I mean, there's a lot happening. So how do you ensure that you're always allowing your intuition to stay at the forefront?
Usually I just try to keep myself open. And when I say open, I mean, I'm not thinking about, like, first of all, I'm not doing a lot of thinking about it because that's where the ego comes in. The ego's like, oh, let me figure this out. So if I find myself overthinking, that's where I have to shut that down and just stay, and just kind of, it's hard to explain, but I just try to stay open. It's the best way I can explain that. I don't know if that helps at all, but
Yeah.
I know that there are times where because I don't resonate with everybody. I resonate with most people. Most of my readings, I want to say it's probably a good 97-98% of the people I read for, it really hits home. But there are some people I read for where it's just it's hard to stay open and it's not flowing that same way. And then I find my ego trying to, well, maybe it could mean, and whenever I see myself doing that, I'm like, oh no, I'm trying to explain it in an analytical way. So there are times where it just feels really hard to connect with their energy and connect with what's coming through. And it's not that often, but there is those moments where it just doesn't come in very easily. So even being open doesn't connect.
That makes a lot of sense. I lost that was my turn. I lost my train of thought. When you talk about connecting with people's energy, is there anything specific that you do? Like if you know somebody really well and you know their stories and background, is it harder to read for them?
It's funny you say that. Yes, it kind of is. I mean, it depends on who it is. If it's someone like who I already know who's very spiritually open, no, because even if they've told me things, it doesn't, like, we already have like that trust thing. We exchange readings and whatever else. But if it's someone that's not like in my spiritual circle that I know that I read for, so the way cards usually come through, the way the meanings usually come through for the person receiving it, 9 times out of 10, it's confirmation and validation. And it's letting them know that they're right where they're supposed to be. It's validating their situation, their experiences, their feelings. and help them know they're on the right path. And I've heard people say tons of times, like, oh my gosh, these are things I didn't even say out loud to people. Like, this is like my own inner dialogue. How did you pick up on that? When I read for someone that I know really well, though, I get really self-conscious that they're just assuming I'm just picking up things they've already told me.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm not. It's literally, because like I said, I remove my thoughts. So I just go with the cards. But, and it's funny because I do get the same thing as if I meet with someone briefly who shares a decent backstory before I get started. And then it starts telling me what they've already told me. I get kind of self-conscious. I'm like, I'm just telling you what I'm seeing, but I know it sounds like I'm just regurgitating.
I've always been curious about that. Yeah, because you know, as an intuitive myself, that is a line that I am very careful about, right? With people that I know and things that come through, and just for integrity and ethics and all of the things. But yeah, I mean, spirit doesn't lie, right?
Yeah. And you know, when I read for strangers, it's easier because it's already gonna make sense that I wouldn't know this about them. That I would, you know, there's no way that I don't know them. I don't know what they're going on or their situation. You know, so it doesn't bother me at all in that situation. But when it's someone that I do know really well, I get self-conscious, but again, that's where that ego is, because the ego is coming in, getting, you know, and so that's where I try to like, okay, get out of there. It's supposed to come in, obviously, so I need to just focus on the reading. But yes, there is that. That's because the ego isn't just trying to analyze. Sometimes it's, you know, the self-conscious parts of us, and it's the self-doubt too. So it's the trying to play safe, and you can't be an open channel if you're trying to play safe.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, it takes a lot of there's a shift that happens with in making sure that you do just jump. I look at it kind of like this information superhighway. You just jump on the superhighway and just flow with what's happening, flow with what's there. It's pretty amazing. So you talked a little bit about would it be called a 3-card spread? The what was happening, what is happening, what might be happening. I might not have said that right.
Yeah.
How do you, what are your, what's a standard reading look like with you?
I'll definitely be showing you one of them at least.
Okay.
My most popular, which is my higher self spread that I created. And I didn't even create it on purpose. It was just, so I was starting to read organically, and it was the same spread started coming up. And then I started noticing each placement had its own meaning. And so it just kind of organically created. So I like to call that my higher self spread. And it's 7 cards. And we'll go into that when I do your reading, so everyone will see that in more detail. And then my smaller reading that I'll do at parties, or if I have if I do like a market and someone orders a mini reading from me, this is the one I use. It's the first card is what's working for you, the second card is what's working against you, and the last card is your higher self message overall. So that's like my second go-to spread, and then other than that, I also just kind of go with whatever the reading is calling for. So I've had people that have come to me with decisions like, should I do this or should I do this? And so I'll pull 3 cards on one side and 3 cards on the other. And even in those spreads though, I don't tell them like, oh, you should do this. This is the energy around this option, and this is the energy around this option. So that way they can make that own discernment for themselves and see what feels good for them. But that's like my decision spread that I would do for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. I appreciate that you put the power back in the people, right? Because it's really important that we don't continue to seek outside of ourselves for what we can really only find and resonate with what's within us. So that's beautiful.
Yes, and I have people who want me to tell them what to do, who want me to give them that, you know, perfect, just, you know, walkway, and you'll find even when you'll get a taste of it when I give you your reading. But I like to use words like, this is the invitation. This is what you're being asked of. And I'll never say you should do this. This is what you're maybe into, or what they're really wanting you to focus on. But it's not, I will never tell someone what to do, because that's not my place. And we're all on our own journey. So maybe, like, even for the decision spread, sometimes one decision is obviously the better option. I mean,
Right.
even without having to dive too far into it. It's like, ooh, that one's better. And they might still choose the other one. And it's
Mhm.
it's because they have lessons to learn around that. And that's
We
their
will.
path. And it's not my place to tell them which one to
Right.
choose. That bad one might be the thing that takes them where they need to go, So
Yeah, and that's our journey of free will, right? I mean, if we all made the choice to make the perfect decision, we wouldn't learn the lessons we need to. So,
yeah. And life would
um,
it would
I'm
evolution.
curious. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
I'm curious because I know there will be people that will be curious listening. Do you use just one deck or do you use multiple decks?
I mainly use one. I'm not the type of reader that has lots of decks. It is kind of funny though because I still have my deck from when I first started reading,
Mhm.
and um and that was the one I always went to. In fact, even up until 2020 and 2021 when I started thinking about my business, even then I was like, well, I don't really need a new deck, do I? Like, I'm happy with this one. I've had this one for like 10 plus years. It's all
Mhm.
good. And it was like a whimsical, it's the Shadowscape deck, and it's all about
Mhm.
like kind of fantasy, whimsical.
Mhm.
And then I asked about it on one of my tarot groups. I was like talking about starting a business and how I only have one deck, and they're like, "Oh, well, you should probably have a deck just for reading for clients and then for
Mhm.
yourself, so you don't like mix the energies." And I thought, "Oh, that makes sense." So I found a deck and I got it, and I fell in love with it, and I only used it
Oh,
for me and my clients. And it's funny because it was like a natural evolution. The other one just didn't speak to me the same way anymore, but I wouldn't have
amazing.
evolved if I didn't have to or felt like I had to. And then I had the same thing happen, although I still use it's the Light Seers deck. I still use that one. That one I kind of call my shadow deck. So if I'm talking
Mhm.
to someone that needs more of a really deep dive on the shadow side, that's when I'll pull that one out. But I recently, last year, was when I started doing events and started reading for people at events. And I thought, well, I should get a deck that's like more lighthearted and bright and vibrant just for those people. So that way, if they don't know tarot, they're not scared of the cards, when they show up. And so I found this deck called the Muse deck. And again, I fell in love with it. And now it's like the main one that I
Oh,
use.
wow.
Um,
That's amazing.
it's just I think I am more of a one deck
Mhm.
kind of reader, but I do like I said, the other recent one, I still kind of use that for more of the shadow work. So I'll kind of use both, but I really like the one I have now. So,
Do you do readings on yourself? I'm guessing you do.
I do.
Do
Yeah.
you have are you drawn to one of your three decks over the other ones?
So for the most part, I use the main one, the
Mhm.
Muse deck, but there are times where the Muse deck doesn't speak to me as well, and so I'll go to the other one, and that one's more like I said. That one I've kind of started to do more of my shadow work, so that one will start speaking to me, and that's what I know. I'm like, oh, okay, I have to do. There's some healing here that I'm not. The other one isn't going to touch for me, so yeah, I have
Fascinating.
that there's a different energy between those two.
Yeah. So I experienced that with the Oracle decks. I had a couple, and then I think it was early 2020. They just they lost all. They just simply did not resonate with me anymore. So it was interesting. I really loved the ones I still have them. I just they don't resonate anymore. So I'm curious if that happens with not necessarily the tool of tarot, but decks, certain decks, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely what happened with me. I outgrew them. I outgrew
Yeah.
that one, and then I outgrew the other one, the more recent one, and eventually I'm sure I'll outgrow this one, but I really like the one I have now, so we'll see how long I'll keep this
Yeah,
one
that's
for.
it. I like the way you say that. I outgrew them. That's kind of what it felt like rather than not resonating. It just felt like I outgrew it. Yeah. So let's jump into the reading. We're going to do a reading on the podcast. This would be really fun. So you just direct me. Yeah, tell me your process.
Perfect. So first we have to decide on a question. We could
Okay.
on any area of your life, whether it's, love, career, purpose, finances, etc. Like really anything you have a question on, we can turn it, we can make it work and look into it. Or we can also see what your higher self wants you to know, and just go a little bit more general. But usually it's general because it doesn't have anything attached to it, but it's usually what you need to hear. So either way, we can work with that.
Okay, so the question, I have a couple questions, but let's start with this one because it may evolve into the other ones. How do I shift limiting beliefs I hold about who I am and how I show up in the world?
Oh, okay. Oh, I love that question. Okay. Yeah. How to shift limiting.
So take us through your process here. Can you talk us through it?
Yes.
Maybe that's not helpful. I don't know.
No, it is. And I think how you ask the questions and the questions you ask is really important too. Um, like, for instance, I don't particularly like yes or no questions. I feel like they're very limiting. Um, and plus, not many things are black and white anyway, right?
Right.
So, like, for when it comes to picking the right questions, I don't usually pick, I don't usually do yes or no. If it's got to be a yes or no, then it's going to be a decision, like this or this, but what's the energy around each? You know what I mean? Like that.
Yes.
That's another reason I like tarot, because it just. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I had a call come in.
No problem.
But yeah, tarot just gets into the nitty gritty. So I don't want to just go, black and white, yes and no. I want to know why it's a yes or why it's a no. You know what I mean? So I don't like yes or no questions. I also I don't think it's helpful to ask questions that are open-ended, that are like, should I get this job? Well, what do you need to know about getting this job is how I would phrase that. I really like to use the what do I need to know prefacing the question, because that's where you get the information to do something with. It's not just me telling you what this is. It's inviting you in to be interactive with it. And that's another part of what I like to do too, is I like to empower whoever I'm working with and put them back in the driver's seat. Like, they're the ones living their life and co-creating with the universe. So,
Yes.
remembering that they have that power is super important.
So do you ever help people rephrase questions depending to make sure the intention is set correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Like a big one is like, if someone wants to know about the relationship. I mean, I can get into how does he feel, where are you guys headed? I can do that. It's not my favorite, but I can do it. What I really like to focus on is, what do you need to know about the relationship and how it's impacting you?
Yeah.
Because you can't change what the other person's feeling or doing. And even if someone feels something for you or is in love with you, it doesn't mean they're good for you either. So it's not, you're only getting one side of the whole picture. So yeah, I really like to bring the focus back to the person asking the question and how it's impacting them and affecting them, because that's where their element of control is anyway, is themselves and their life.
I bet there's people that show up that don't realize that.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's where I also like to remind them that they're,
Mhm.
and that's why I use words like invitation and this is the tools, because I want them to leave feeling like they have something to work with and take with them, than just me telling them a bunch of stuff for them to just walk away with, okay, now what?
Yeah. No, that's great.
All right. So I did my higher self spread. The
Mhm.
first card is the theme card. Then we have past, present, future energies, and then higher self messages overall. And I'll go over each card, but that's just kind of the basic layout. So starting with your theme card, I love this. This is the Emperor. And so this whole spread is going to be around, how do you let go of limiting beliefs?
Mhm.
And I love this for being your theme. The Emperor is all about learning how to take up space. It's learning how to step into your own power. There's also a leadership element to it as well. It's learning how to use your voice, learning how not to be afraid to rock the boat, and just being able to step into all that you are and show that to the world without feeling like you have to play small in order to fit in. And so it tells me that this is probably work you're already starting to do. You're already starting to learn how to own your own power and step into that. Another element that often comes with the Emperor is imposter syndrome. So part, and I feel like that's kind of the limiting beliefs that it's speaking to, is feeling like, well, who am I to step into this role and fill up this space and use my voice and rock the boat if I use my voice? Who am I to do that? And so I feel like with that being your theme, that's a big part of the limiting beliefs that you're struggling with, is how do I own my own power and not feel like I have to play small to connect with others and guide others. So that's our starting point.
Beautiful. That was the
Um,
theme. That's the theme.
that's the
Card?
theme.
Okay. Beautiful.
And by the way, feel free, if you want to comment as I go, feel free to do that. If you'd rather just let me do the whole reading and comment afterwards, that's fine too.
Okay.
Just don't be afraid to interrupt me if you like need to say
Sure.
something or acknowledge
Okay.
something. All right. So looking at your recent past. Oh, I love this too. So we have the Eight of Pentacles reversed. So part of learning how to step into your own power and leaning into that Emperor, in your recent past, you were taking some kind of I don't know if it was a class, or maybe you're just doing some of your own self-studying around stepping into your own power, but you were definitely learning tools on how to do that. Now there was some impatience. You kind of feel like in the past, you kind of felt like, well, I should already know how to do this. I have the tools. Why am I not doing this already? And so the element, the energy around the Eight of Pentacles is you're an apprentice. You're learning. And think of it of like climbing a ladder. You have to start from the bottom rung as an apprentice. And then, because each rung, you learn something new to help you with the next rung. So it's like a new tool for your tool belt on each rung. And so I feel like you took some kind of a course or a class, or like I said, you did you were studying on your own, but you were really trying to teach yourself how to be a leader, how to step into this role of using your voice as a way to help others, and knowing that you have a right to be there and taking up space and all of that. And there is still this feeling of like, well, I should know how to do this already. Like I should already be an expert, and why is it taking forever? And so, and like I said, this is more recent past, but it's probably bleeding into the present a little bit too. And so this card's always, first of all, reminding you Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes time to practice what you're learning too. And then each rung, you learn something new. So you can't skip steps, because each step is so important to the growth evolution. Presently, we have the Seven of Cups. I love this. So I feel like when it comes to you stepping into this leadership role, you're still not entirely sure how you want to utilize that yet. You're not sure which avenue you want to take it and where you want to go with it. Because the Seven of Cups, so this is in your present position. The Seven of Cups is saying that you're kind of taste testing. You're dabbling with this idea, you're dabbling with this other idea, and you're just kind of looking at all the options that you can go with and really learn from. Now that might make you feel a little wishy-washy. That might make you feel like, oh my God, I need to pick something. Why am I all over the place? And the thing with the Seven of Cups is it's saying, no, you're not supposed to pick anything. You're not supposed to commit to anything right now. You're taste testing. You're seeing which ones align with you, which ones don't. And then eventually something's going to align with you more specifically. And that's when you'll know, okay, this is it. This is the avenue I'm going to take. But right now, don't be afraid to really just lean into all the options, because you're not sure yet where you're going to take this new tool of learning yourself and your own power. I do think that you're meant to be doing something with it. And I do think that you're going to be, and I think that that's part of, even though I feel like you are getting rid of these limiting beliefs, obviously for yourself. I think you're ultimately, there's some of the reasoning behind it is because you want to help other people do the same thing. And so I feel like right now you're just meant to look at where you're going to take it. And by leaning more into what you're doing, by trying different things, but also leaning into the journey of it, if that makes sense. Moving into the near future. Okay, so I love this. We have the 10 of Swords. This card literally speaks to letting go of limiting beliefs. Like that's like the basis meaning of this card. So I like to use the analogy of a snake shedding its skin when I see this card. So a snake, when it grows, it doesn't have a choice. Like it's got to let go of its old skin. And so I'm not seeing resistance, which is good. That tells me that you're leaning into the shedding process. You're not fighting it. It's never easy to let go of old limiting beliefs, but you're not it's not something that you're holding on to, because some people will hold on to limiting beliefs because they feel familiar, and it's there's a sense of comfortability with that. But I'm not sensing that from you. It really feels like you're leaning into the process. It's not always easy to let go of those, of what you've carried for so many years. So this isn't just limiting beliefs. This is also narratives and stories that you've told yourself as well that connect the limiting beliefs. It's what makes the limiting beliefs believable, is the stories and narratives around it. So moving into your near future, I do feel like you're on that direction of really letting go of those ideas. And again, I feel like a lot of it has to be around you knowing it's your birthright to step into your own power. Like a lot of that is whatever is holding you back from really owning what you're here to offer. So the higher self message to the near future is the 10 of Cups. So higher self is basically saying, as you're shedding all these old beliefs, and and that's like I said, that's a transitional period that's not easy. Use being present as a way to help you. Like that's the invitation and the tool to help you in the process of letting go. A lot of us, I think, forget that the present is where life happens. The past is already gone, which I think it's also, makes sense that to say that a lot of this is your past, right? You're letting go of past belief systems and narratives and memories and things like that are attached to it. So the past is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. The future never shows up the way we think it will. So worrying about it is kind of pointless. Even though we all do it, it never shows up the way we think it will. So what higher self is saying is, as you shed these old beliefs. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Another call come in. Find a way to ground yourself in the present, and to really not just be in the present, but be in your joy. Immerse yourself in what is happening in the now. And what it's going to do a couple of things. One, some of the reasons why we have a hard time letting go of limiting beliefs is because we're thinking about it too much. it's in our mind a lot. And so what the 10 of Cups is inviting you to do is to just let it go. And when you're present, let's say you're meditating, or you're sitting outside and you're feeling the wind on your face, or you're watching birds fly, or squirrels play, or you're sitting with friends and you're really just immersed in their company, you're not thinking about letting go of your stuff. You're not, your mind isn't there. Oh, sorry. So higher self is really just saying, find ways to be more present and be more in the moment, and just be more in what is happening right now. And that's going to help you through that transition of letting go of those limiting beliefs. And then the final cards in the middle. Oh my God, I love this. So first we have the 9 of Swords reversed. I mean, not the 9, the Knight of Swords reversed. Typically when this card is upright, it's saying that you're feeling this, you have this feeling of just going for something. So there's some kind of and it could just be charging towards letting go of your limiting beliefs, or it could be charging towards some kind of a pursuit around what your limiting beliefs is holding you back from. So you feel called to do something. You feel called to do something. Your limiting beliefs are saying, no, you can't do that. You're not ready. Don't do that yet. So with it being reversed, it's basically saying that you're feeling called to go for this thing, and your mind is what's telling you to pump the brakes. So it is your limiting beliefs are saying, no, don't do that. You could fail. If you really go for it, what if it all falls apart? And the thing is, when this card comes up, it's the fastest moving knight in the deck. So the invitation with this one is, go for it. Throw caution to the wind. Do the work. Like this isn't the same thing as a leap of faith. A leap of faith is taking the jump and trusting you're going to be something's going to catch you. This one it's not the same. It's throw caution to the wind and go for it, but do the work. Put your all into it, and you're going to be really happy with the outcome. So this is one of those examples where it's because it's reversed. It's the resistance of it. You're feeling called to go for it. Like on a soul level, it's for you, but your beliefs are like, no, don't do it. And so the card next to that is the 8 of Swords. This one speaks to feeling trapped, feeling like your hands are bound, feeling like there's really only one way forward, and that forward is blocked. Okay, so first of all, the 8 of Swords, just like the Ten of Swords and the Knight of Swords, it's all about the mind. It's all about the narrative that you're telling yourself. It's not reality. It's not truth. So you're not actually trapped. And there are like hundreds of ways forward. It's not just the one way that you think it is. That's your narrow-minded, like tunnel vision that you have going on. So with these two side by side, you feel called to go for something. You're pumping the brakes because you feel like your hands are trapped when they're not trapped at all. And this one is like a soul. You're being called to go for it, and you're saying, no, I'm not ready, or no, I'm afraid it's not going to work out. And higher self is really coming back to these two cards. It's saying you're ready to let go of those things holding you back and keeping you from moving forward. And the way to counteract those fears and the narratives and everything else is to just be living in the now as much as you can. So
Beautiful.
that was everything that came through.
I just have to say, what a gifted, you've really stepped into your power doing this work. It's so lovely to see people doing that. So thank you for such a thorough reading. I've never experienced a tarot reading before, but it felt very resonant. It felt aligned. You spoke to it just it just met me right where I was at. Let me touch on a little bit about the limiting beliefs and then kind of what came up. I think a lot of it actually stems from some past life incarnations that I've brought into this life. I know I've been called here to do big things here on in this incarnation, but there are a lot of things that I have created in my mind that are holding me back. Movement forward is what moves through those limiting beliefs, and keeping moving forward and developing a practice of meditation, which I've had for 15 plus years, is what keeps the light on. It's what keeps me going forward, because I can't worry about the past or what's happening in the future. I have to remain very present in the moment. And it's the times when I step outside of that and that anxiety forms. What's happening before and what's happening in the future that really stresses those limiting beliefs. So spot on. I mean, it was just really spot on. And I have what aligns with what comes through with my intuition is the fact that the only way through those limiting beliefs is to not give power to them, not allow them to rise within me. I have to move. I have to continue to create that forward momentum to be able to move through those things. You did say something I thought was so interesting. You've either taken a class or you've dabbled in 100 different things. Yes, I have. I that is my MO. I just throw myself into anything and everything, and then feel like, why do I feel like I'm, things aren't happening for me? So that was good confirmation for me that it's okay to keep doing that and to keep exploring and to keep finding new ways to show up in the world. So
good. I'm so glad it resonated. And yeah. So that's really just a nutshell of what I do.
Yeah, that was what a great way to showcase that for sure. So thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else that you want to share about tarot in general, just in this very short, lovely conversation that we've had before we wrap up?
I mean, the one thing that I've been wanting to put out there too, letting people know that anyone can do this. Like, everyone has intuition. I mean, I think some of us are a little more sensitive and naturally sensitive than others, but it's like a muscle. Everyone can turn that on and work on building that up. And so, and you don't necessarily even need to be super in touch with your intuition to go and just start looking at the cards. If it's something that calls to you and you're interested in, and it resonates, or you're curious, I would just invite you to look into it. Maybe it doesn't go anywhere, but maybe you'll find something really special there. And even before I read professionally, I was just pulling cards for myself for several years, and it was just as medicinal. So I just wanted to also empower those that maybe have been curious, but feel like they have to have something special to look into it. Just let everyone know that no, anyone can start with this and maybe turn it into more, or just have it as a daily practice, or just, look into it.
So what's the best way, I guess, to start learning about it? Like, do you have any sort of recommendations on courses or books, or is the best way to just play with them? Play is maybe not the right word. Work with them.
Yeah, I would say, working with them, most tarot decks comes with a booklet of the meanings. So I would say starting with looking at each of the meanings of the card, and then also feel if that meaning resonates or not. And then, or just look at the cards themselves and see what you get from it too. I mean, I think playing is a really great way to start. But also, there's a podcaster named Lindsay Mack, and she really, her course is what opened me up to really deciding to go for doing this professionally. And so she has a course called The Untamed Tarot, I think, or her podcast is called Tarot for the Wild Soul. And so you can find that course, but I think it's called Untamed Tarot or it's something like that. But she's got several courses, so I would definitely recommend looking into her too if you wanted to look for something more tangible, like a course. She's pretty,
yeah, that's great. So how can people find you to experience one of your magical readings? Because that's what it felt like for me.
So you can find me at journeythroughtarot.com. I'm also on Instagram at journeythroughtarot. And I offer email readings. So this is like, if you don't want to interact with me, but you want a reading that's just as resonant as, the one I just performed. So you would just ask a question, and then I would respond back with a picture of the cards pulled and a pre-recorded personalized reading. So you'd get a personalized reading for what I pulled for you. And it would be all through email. You wouldn't even have to talk to me other than email. I know some people don't want to interact in person, but I also offer sessions as well. If you want to do a one-on-one session ranging from 15 minutes up to an hour with me, just depending on your time frame and what you want to dive into. And then I also have if you use the code word journey, all caps, when you either order an email reading or a session with me, you can get 20% off as a way to just kind of see if this is something you want to try out.
Oh, how nice. Oh, what a great gift. That's wonderful. So as we wrap up, we like to end our podcast with what is your grounded guidance for our community? Like a message or something that just feels resonant for you to wrap up.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. I would just say, knowing that, we're all spiritual beings, that whether tarot, because I know tarot is not going to resonate with everyone, like you had mentioned that too. So I would encourage everyone to find what tool does resonate, what tool can they turn to for guidance. And, it could be tarot, it could be oracle, it could be a number of different things, meditation, but some kind of a daily practice that allows you to get in tune with yourself and spirit, kind of interchange, like interconnecting you with spirit and yourself at the same time on like a daily practice. Because I think that having some kind of spiritual grounded practice is really important. And that's just something I've found in my own personal life. So
beautiful. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Grounded Guidance podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our podcast and leaving a review. Your feedback helps us reach more curious minds like yours. Until next time, stay grounded, stay guided, and keep stretching your edges to think differently. Take care, my friends.